working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila in Vietnam. Hello, Eliana.
Hello, I'm Eliana Faith Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, giving you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, the Department of Health is verifying the test results and health status of all passengers of the flights where the 10 returning overseas Filipinos who recently tested positive for the Omicron variant.
President Rodrigo Duterte on Thursday ordered barangay captains to restrict the movements of unvaccinated individuals as the country grapples with a sudden spike of COVID-19 infections.
Japan and Australia signed a landmark treaty to strengthen defense ties, saying the accord would contribute to regional stability as China expands its military and economic clout and the concerns in the Indo-Pacific region.
Cambodian police arrested a casino workers' union leader and two of her colleagues Tuesday as hundreds of workers protested against layoffs at a gambling hotspot run by a Hong Kong-listed firm.
First in our news, the Department of Health is verifying the test results and health status of all passengers of the flights where the 10 returning overseas Filipinos, or ROFs, who recently tested positive for the Omicron variant. In a statement, the DOH said that this is to determine if there are other confirmed cases or passengers who became symptomatic after their arrival. Travelers who have arrived in the Philippines through these flights may call the DOH at the COVID-19 hotlines at 8942-6843 or 1555 or their respective LGUs to report their status, according to the DOH on Thursday, January 6. It did not, however, post the flights where the 10 ROFs positive for Omicron had been on. The DOH said it is also verifying the COVID-19 test results of all the passengers of these flights where the Omicron positive ROFs had boarded. Coming to the Philippines. Of the 19 local Omicron cases, 14 cases are still active. 3 cases have been tagged as recovered, while there are 2 cases whose outcome are still being verified, according to the DOH in a statement. It also said that 29 Omicron variant cases are composed of 10 ROFs and 19 local cases with indicated addresses in the NCR, or National Capital Region, bringing the total number of confirmed Omicron variant cases to 43.
After the Metro Manila Council, or MMC, agreed to impose enhanced restrictions on individuals who are unvaccinated against COVID-19, some of Metro Manila mayors have moved to have their city council pass an ordinance to ensure the limits are legally enforceable. The first was the Quezon City Council announced on Wednesday that an ordinance regulating the mobility of individuals unvaccinated for COVID-19 in the city was passed already. It was introduced by Councilors Eric Medina, Franz Pumaren, Donnie Matias, and June Ferrer Jr. The MMC earlier issued Resolution Number 2201, Series of 2022, urging local government units to enact ordinances for enhanced restrictions on unvaccinated individuals. On Monday, the Metro Manila mayors agreed that unvaccinated individuals in the NCR shall, number 1, remain in their residences at all times, except for the procurement of essential goods and services, such as, but not limited to, food, water, medicine, medical devices, public utilities and energy, work, and medical and dental necessities, provided, however, that individual outdoor exercise shall be allowed within the general area of their residence. For example, within the barangay, purok, subdivision, or village, subject to the guidelines of the Metro Manila local government units. Number 2, be prohibited in indoor and outdoor or alfresco dining in restaurants and other food establishments, and shall likewise be prohibited from leisure or social trips to malls, hotels, event venues, sports and country clubs, and similar facilities. Number 3, be prohibited in domestic travel via public transportation by land, sea, and air, except if for the procurement of essential goods and services. And number 4, be required to undergo a reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction or RT-PCR test every 2 weeks at their personal expense and present a COVID-19 negative result prior to being admitted for work on site, consistent with the guidelines, rules, and regulations issued by the Interagency Task Force and the Department of Labor and Employment, provided, however, that in the event that the RT-PCR test and or result are not immediately available, a rapid antigen test may be utilized in lieu thereof. The same rules shall also cover individuals who reside outside of the NCR but who work and or travel to the region.
Meanwhile, President Duterte on Thursday ordered barangay captains to restrict the movements of unvaccinated individuals as the country grapples with a sudden spike of COVID infections. Let's listen in.
Measures, I said the ministrant functions, I repeat, of government is to come up with measures to protect the public interest, public health, public order, public safety, and blah, blah, blah. So, in the absence of a law, yung presidente is called upon to act. And because it is a national emergency, it is my position that we can restrain. And that I have ordered the barangay captains, because under the law, ang barangay captain can enforce all the laws of the land within his community. That's the long and short of being a person in authority. Lahat na batas, except those reserved for some sectors, agencies, and the president, lahat, they are mandated to enforce the laws of the land, all laws within their jurisdiction, except the exemptions that's reserved for some officials or agencies. That is my position, and I continue to, I'm now giving orders to the barangay captain to look for those persons who are not vaccinated and just would request them or order them, if you may, to stay put. And if he refuses, he goes out of the house and goes around in the community or maybe wherever magpunta, he can be restrained.
The Metro Manila Council, composed of the 70 local chief executives in the National Capital Region, has agreed to enact resolutions that will enhance restrictions regulating the movement of unvaccinated individuals during the imposition of high-risk classification status of the region. The restrictions will only be temporary and will be lifted once the COVID-19 alert level in the NCR is lowered from level 3 to level 2 or below.
Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP Chief General Andres Centino, has tested positive for COVID-19. Colonel Ramon Zagala said this in a message to reporters and added that General Centino is now in an approved isolation facility within Camp Aguinaldo, where he will continue to perform his job, albeit in quarantine, military spokesperson Friday. Despite this, Centino will remain in full command of the AFP and will be supervising all units and carrying out their assigned tasks through all allowed and available means. Earlier this week, Philippine National Police Chief General Leonardo Carlos also contracted COVID-19 and is currently in isolation. 4 cabinet officials are also under quarantine after being exposed to people who have been infected with the disease. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana, and Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat.
Meanwhile, President Duterte on Thursday expressed concerns over the new B16402 lineage, or the IHU COVID-19 variant, saying it will enter the country whether we like it or not. Dr. Edsel Salvana, a member of the Department of Health Technical Advisory Group, said the IHU variant is not yet an official variant of concern nor interest, but a variant under monitoring. Let's listen in.
Meanwhile, another variant has also been reported in the so-called IHU variant, which was first detected in France last November. May dadating rin ito, whether we like it or not, dadating to.
So yung IHU po kasi, this is not an official variant of concern or even an official variant of interest. Ang World Health Organization po ang nagsasabi, ang nagde-designate ng variants of concern and variants of interest. IHU is the name of an institute in France po that described this particular lineage of the virus. And the WHO has already been monitoring this since November of last year. Ito po yung lineage na B.1.640. So in summary po for IHU, IHU is not a variant of concern. It is not exhibiting increased infectivity or immune evasion at this time. So gumagana po yung bakuna natin for this. WHO is monitoring it, pero hindi pa po siya VOI or VOC. It's designated as a VUM po. Actually, nanay niya yung designated na VUM, yung B.1.640. The thing to remember po is that yung mutations po natin, kahit madami pa yung mutations, they do not necessarily translate into immune evasion or more transmissibility. Kung naalala niyo po, Mr. President, yung P3 natin or Theta na describe una dito sa Pilipinas, dati po naging VOI yon, it was called Theta, tapos naging VUM, variant under monitoring, tapos natanggal na lang siya. Nakakatakot siya kung titingnan natin yung mutations niya, but it did not pan out. Actually, tinanggal na siya sa monitoring. So hopefully, ganito rin po yung mangyayari sa IHU. But of course, we have to continue to be vigilant kasi marami po talaga itong na-generate na variants, especially among people who are not vaccinated.
Experts say the IHU variant, which was first detected in France, has 46 mutations. And Dr. Salvana said while the health authorities in the Philippines will continue to monitor this variant, their attention right now will focus on the Delta and Omicron because this is really making havoc all over the world.
Now to Thailand, where they reimpose mandatory COVID-19 measures for foreign tourists, nixing a quarantine-free travel scheme as the kingdom seeks to stifle the spread of the Omicron variant. But the government announced last December the so-called test and go scheme will be suspended for at least 2 weeks. Now they've extended that indefinitely due to the rising number of COVID cases due to Omicron. Let's listen in.
One of those is, of course, about the opening up of pubs and bars. We'll have to monitor the situation in that regard. Another important thing is, of course, the suspension of the test and go, as you may have learned from the news. Now, definitely, there will be a continuation of the suspension of the test and go, meaning a continuation of the quarantine for people entering the country. Definitely, there will be that extension, but As we speak now, the meeting is talking about the date in which that suspension will be lifted. The meeting discussed current global situation. Daily number of cases reported worldwide has significantly increased to over 1.9 million cases, confirmed cases today, with Omicron variant being found worldwide. And the overall situation in Asia, the Asian continent, remains stable, with Thailand ranked as number 25 in the world for the number of cases. And regarding the Phuket Sandbox scheme, hotels are preparing to propose hotel isolation measures for asymptomatic guests to help dealing with the lack of sufficient bed capacity in the province of Phuket, and preparing for the infection of new variant in concerns while continuing the operation of tourism business in the Sandbox area. The related authorities have been assessing in the best way possible to address the public health measures to balance both health security and normalizing economic activities. So, of course, this affects businesses, it affects travelers. We are aware of that. If you recall, at the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2020, this virus hit us with surprise. But if 2020 was a year that something hit us with surprise, and 2021 was a year that we continued with our struggle, with our strict measures, our discipline. We hope that the year 2022 will shine a new light. We hope that this year we will be able to tackle and rid COVID-19 once and for all. Of course, Omicron is the dominant variant in many countries, but hoping that we will be able to contain it in the same way that hoping that we will be able to contain all variants, actually, be it Delta, be it Alpha, be it Omicron, or what may be. So hoping for the best in the year 2022 ahead.
Meanwhile, President Duterte on Thursday night also renewed his call to the Philippine National Police to arrest and imprison black market sellers of essential goods and services. Let's listen in.
If it's an inquest, wala na yung answer in 10 days of the counter affidavit. Inquest is almost summary. And if the fiscal decides to file the case immediately, then the arrest is the arrest is coupled with detention. Yan ang dapat sa kanila. Sabi ko, no exception. Ulihin ninyo ang may-ari. Kung ang sales girl lang, then arrest the owner. No exception. Arrest them and detain them for 24 hours. And I think that is a serious offense, black marketing. This time, if you do that, talagang upakan ko kayo. I would request the Department of Justice just to assign fiscal so that they can conduct a summary investigation.
The Food and Drug Administration officer in charge, Dr. Oscar Gutierrez, urged the public to purchase medicines only from FDA-licensed drug outlets. Under Republic Act number 9711 or the FDA Act of 2009, the manufacture, importation, exportation, sale, offering for sale, distribution, transfer, non-consumer use, promotion, advertising, or sponsorship of health products without proper authorization is prohibited.
Now in Vietnam, the Ministry of Health on Thursday announced 25,842 new COVID-19 cases on Thursday, raising the national patient tally to 1,843,563. The latest cases include 16,472 COVID-19 cases recorded over the last 24 hours, while the rest 9,370 was updated by the southern province of Bin Long, said the ministry. The same day, the ministry also reported further 28,369 recoveries, taking the total number of recovered cases to 1,464,415. There were 170 fatalities over the last 24 hours, bringing the nation's COVID-19 death toll to 33,644, or 1.8% of the total infections. The nation has administered 156,902,083 COVID-19 vaccine doses, an increase of 1,692,955 doses from Wednesday.
And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Eliana and I will be back right after this.
Totoong sa dalawang taong nag-iibigan, isa sa inyo ang masasaktan.
Huwag mong abulin yung taong ayaw na sa'yo. Baka madapa ka pa.
Kawawa naman ang baby.
So can we skip to the good part?
It's a prank! Isusuot ko na to para masimulan natin ang Say What?
Hindi ako bumabase sa itsura.
Funniest Nakaball Videos!
Welcome back. Cambodia's strongman ruler Hun Sen arrives in Myanmar Friday for talks with the junta, the first foreign leader to visit since the generals seized power almost a year ago. Myanmar has been in chaos since the February 1 coup, which ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's civilian government and ended the country's decade-long dalliance with democracy. More than 1,400 civilians have been killed as the military has cracked down on dissent, according to a local monitoring group, and numerous anti-junta militias have sprung up around the country. Hun Sen's foreign minister has warned the country contains all the ingredients for civil war, and international rights groups and local anti-junta activists have urged him to cancel the two-day visit. But the veteran leader, whose country currently holds the rotating chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, said he would go and was willing to extend his trip if it would help diffuse the tensions. He will travel with his deputy prime minister and foreign minister and hold talks with junta chief Min Aung Hlaing, according to a Cambodian government statement. On Wednesday, Hun Sen called for a ceasefire, saying all relevant parties must stop violence. In October, the bloc took the highly unusual step of excluding Min Aung Hlaing from a summit in response to an ASEAN envoy being denied a meeting with Suu Kyi. But there has been little tangible progress in ending the turmoil in Myanmar. In the latest atrocity, more than 30 people were killed on Christmas Eve, and a massacre blamed on the military.
A handful of Myanmar nurses hiding from the junta have been risking arrest by running makeshift clinics to treat COVID patients and resistance fighters with medicine smuggled past military checkpoints. The country's healthcare workers have found themselves at the forefront of a civil disobedience movement against the February coup and a crackdown on dissent that has killed more than 1,300.
CDM လောက်တုံးကဒီလက်ကောမှာရှိတဲ့ CDM တွေစုထားပြီးတော့ဗောနော်ပရာဟိတအတင်ဖွဲ့ထားတာရှိတယ်အမှဝင်လောက်တယ်ဝင်လောက်ရင်လည်းတိုက်ပွဲစခါကျတော့ဒီဖက်မှာဆရာဝန်ရောကျမကြီးဝန်ထမ်းကအားနေတယ်လို့ဒီဖက်ကအဖို့ဖတွေကပြောတာပေါ့ပြောခါကျတော့ရနိုင်မလားဆရာဝန်ခေါ်လာပေးလို့ရမလားဆိုတော့တိုက်ပွဲစချင်မှာကအရန်ခက်ခဲတယ်ခေါ်လာပေါ့ခက်ခဲခါကျတော့စေအိတ်အရင်ရှာတယ်ရှာပြီးဆရာဝန်ရှာလို့မတွေ့ခါကျတော့ကိုယ်တိုင်တက်လာလိုက်တယ်ဟုတ်အောက်ဆီဂျင်ဆိုရင်လည်းရှိတဲ့ဟာလေးနဲ့ပဲရတဲ့လောက်ပေါ့လောက်ရတယ်ခက်ခက်ခဲလိုက်ကိုထိပြန်သွားတွင်းရတာပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါဟာကျတော့ပစ္စည်းတွေကအစအမှန်ဆိုရင်တစ်ခါသုံးပစ္စည်းဆိုရင်လည်းကျမတို့က recycle ပြန်လုပ်ရတယ်ဒီပြန်လန်းနဲ့ပုတ်သက်စီဖြန်းပြီးတော့ပြန်သုံးရတယ်အတွက်ခက်ခဲတော့ပေါ့
ဘောနော်ဒီစိတ်ကာလမှာကကြစိတ်ရှောင်တွေကလည်းမလွဲမသွေစိတ်တွေပါသွားရှောင်ရကကြတော့လူကပေါင်းစုံပြီလေလူကတရွာနဲ့တရွာပြီးလို့ရှိလူကတော်တော်စုံနေအဲကြောင့်အခါကြလေတချို့ကကြတော့လေအမှစိတ်ရှောင်ရင်းနဲ့ပိုတော့တော်တော်တွေ့ရပေါ့
Meanwhile, the junta held a ceremony in Naypyidaw to mark Myanmar's 74th Independence Day. The event was chaired by the Vice Chairman of the State Administration Council, Vice Senior General So Win.
Cambodian police arrested a casino workers union leader and two of her colleagues Tuesday as hundreds of workers protested against layoffs at a gambling hotspot run by a Hong Kong-listed firm. Let's take a look.
យើងនៅតែបន្តទៀមទាដដែលព្រោះអីពួកយើងធ្វើនេះអត់មានអ្នកណាមកញុះញង់មកហៅឬក៏សម្លិតបំភ័យអីទេពួកយើងមកនេះគឺយើងមកទៀមទាចេញពីចិត្តចេញពីបេះដូងដើម្បីការពារឆ្នាំងបាយយើងមិនមែនបាទយើងទៀមទាពីតកែណាកានេះឲ្យដោះស្រាយឲ្យយើងមិនមែនទៀមទាពីរដ្ឋាភិបាលទេគឺយើងធ្វើនេះគឺយើងមានចំនួនជាមួយនឹងក្រុមហ៊ុន Nagaver ជាពិសេសសូមឲ្យក្រុមហ៊ុន Nagaver ត្រូវតែអង្គុយតោចរចារករំដោះស្រាយជូនបុគ្គលិកខ្លួនឯងដែរកំពុងបម្រើការនេះបាទ
Chim Sitar, the leader of the workers' union at Nagacorp Limited's casino and hotel complex in Phnom Penh, was dragged into a car by plainclothes police as she arrived at a protest. AFP journalists at the scene said hundreds of workers were demanding the reinstatement of 365 employees laid off last year during the COVID-19 pandemic. Two other unionists from her group were also arrested on Tuesday afternoon, according to rights activists. Earlier, Phnom Penh Deputy Police Chief Boon Soseka had said that the trio were wanted on incitement charges because the workers' strike, which began last month, was illegal. The arrests came after a Phnom Penh court on Monday jailed 6 people over incitement charges in connection with the same casino strike. Police also confirmed they were questioning 17 other casino workers arrested on Monday. Those striking told AFP they had not been compensated properly and would continue their action until their demands are met. A group of 119 rights organizations called on authorities to immediately release the workers, saying their strike was peaceful. Negacorp, which has the exclusive license to operate in Phnom Penh until 2065, could not be reached immediately for comment. Cambodia, one of the Southeast Asia's poorest countries, has a complex relationship with casinos. While it has casinos, its own citizens are officially barred from playing in them.
In other news, Japan and Australia on Thursday signed a landmark treaty to strengthen defense ties, saying the accord would contribute to regional stability as China expands its military and economic clout. Take a look.
Prime Minister, today we demonstrate the strength of our bonds as we sign our reciprocal access agreement, the first of its kind for Japan. The RAA is a landmark treaty which opens a new chapter for advanced defence and security cooperation in what is a complex and rapidly changing world, something you and I both understand very well.
まず本日署名させていただきました日豪円滑化協定は日豪の安保協力を新たな段階に引き上げる画期的な協定であると思っています。現下の安全保障環境において日豪のこの安保協力の重要性、これはますます高まっています。両国が精力的に交渉してきた成果が今ここに結実したこと、大変嬉しく思っています。
Japan and Australia, along with the United States and India, are part of the Quad grouping that has worked to build an alliance in the face of China's swelling presence across Asia, including its threats to vital international sea lanes like the South China Sea. Ali Wayne, senior analyst at Eurasia Group, said the treaty could enhance Tokyo and Canberra's ability to carry out joint military exercises in Japan with the United States. While Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison did not mention Beijing directly, in a statement released ahead of the signing, the agreement is seen as another step by the regional allies to signal their concerns over China's military expansion. Japan's defense spending has been increasing steadily for a decade, and the country's draft 2022-23 budget includes a record figure for the military. Tokyo's defense ministry says the regional security situation is becoming increasingly severe at an unprecedented speed, noting challenges posed by China and North Korea. Also in September, the U.S., Britain, and Australia announced they had formed a new alliance called AUKUS, under which Australia will acquire nuclear-powered submarines using U.S. technology.
ASEAN in Focus will be back after a short break.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Ay lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. Philippine Airlines has said it has emerged from bankruptcy after a U.S. court approved its plan to slash up to $2 billion in debt and obtain additional capital. The national carrier of the Philippines had filed for bankruptcy in the United States in September, seeking relief from creditors as it tried to survive the devastation unleashed on the airline industry by the coronavirus pandemic. Its court-approved reorganization plan includes a $2 billion debt reduction, an additional liquidity of $505 million from its main shareholder, PAL said in a statement Friday. It also has the option to obtain up to $150 million in additional financing from new investors. PAL has streamlined operations with a reorganized fleet and is now better capitalized for future growth, the airline added. Air travel in the Philippines collapsed by more than 75% in 2020 due to travel restrictions imposed to contain the coronavirus, according to government data. From 60 million domestic and international passengers in 2019, traffic plunged to just over 13 million in 2020. PAL said in September it had canceled more than 80,000 flights, wiping out $2 billion in revenue, and let go of more than 2,000 employees. As borders reopen and travel restrictions ease, the airline said it will resume regular flights, including to cities in mainland China and Australia.
In other news, Indonesia, the world's biggest exporter of coal used in electricity generation, on Saturday said it has banned January exports of the fuel in a move aimed at safeguarding its domestic power supply. Rising demand for electricity in the country risks widespread blackouts unless more supplies are diverted to power stations, according to the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in a statement. Indonesia exports the majority of its coal but mandates that producers must set aside minimum amounts to supply the nation's power plants. The decision comes against a backdrop of surging demand as post-pandemic economic growth across the world drives electricity needs that cannot be met from less polluting alternatives. The International Energy Agency last month said global demand for coal, the world's biggest source of greenhouse gases, hit a record in 2021 and would be sustained into 2022, threatening plans set out at last year's COP26 climate change conference to cut emissions. Last January, Indonesia exported almost 30 million tons of coal, according to the Central Statistics Bureau. The export ban was imposed after coal miners failed to meet the so-called domestic market obligation, under which they are obliged to supply at least 25% of a mine's approved production plan at a maximum sales price of $70 per metric ton, less than half the global benchmark price. The temporary export ban would prevent almost 20 power plants, providing a total of 10.9 gigawatts of power, from shutting down, according to a senior official at the ministry, Ridwan Jalaluddin, in a statement on Saturday. He said the government would reevaluate the policy after January 5.
Budget carrier AirAsia Philippines on Wednesday said its domestic operations will continue despite a resolution approved by the Metro Manila Development Authority, or MMDA, limiting the mobility of unvaccinated individuals. Under its Resolution 2201 series of 2022, the MMDA urged local government units in the National Capital Region to issue ordinances sparing the unvaccinated individuals and minors from going outside except for essential activities. AirAsia said it will continue ferrying fully vaccinated travelers as well as unvaccinated essential travelers. In compliance with the resolution signed by Metro Manila mayors, we will continue to fly eligible vaccinated individuals and unvaccinated guests with essential travel passes only, AirAsia Philippines spokesperson Steve Dailison said in a statement. He added that the airline remains optimistic of continued strong demand for air travel among vaccinated individuals. Among the carrier's mitigation efforts is having all its flight and ground crews fully vaccinated, he said. On Tuesday, Cebu Pacific canceled a number of domestic flights from January 4 to 10. Both Cebu Pacific and AirAsia on Wednesday said passengers may avail of flexibility options should they wish to postpone their travel.
And amid inbound flight restrictions imposed by the Hong Kong government, the Philippine Airlines has canceled 10 flights from Manila, bound for the Chinese semi-autonomous region from January 6 to the 21st. In an advisory yesterday, PAL said flight PR300, supposedly scheduled on January 6, 7, 9, 12, 13, 14, 16, 19, 20, and 21 were canceled, but flight PR301 Hong Kong to Manila will continue to operate as scheduled every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Our planes will fly into Hong Kong as all cargo flights, and then the return flight to Manila, PR301, shall carry passengers. That according to PAL spokesperson Shelo Villaluna. Affected passengers may refund their ticket, excluding the ticketing service charge, or convert the ticket into a voucher valid for 1 year from the date of issuance. The travel credits will be equivalent to the unused bus fare or base fare. They can also rebook or reroute the ticket to another flight with available space within 60 days from the original flight schedule.
Hong Kong has imposed a ban on flights from 8 countries, including the Philippines, from January 8 to 21. The move is part of its COVID-19 restrictions after detecting cases of the Omicron variant. Let's listen in.
亦都禁止曾經逗留過喺呢8個國家嘅人士去登上任何民航嘅客機嚟香港，即係話轉機嘅人呢都唔得㗎啦。如果佢喺呢個地方轉機嚟香港，但之前佢係喺呢個地方咧就唔得啦嚇。如果佢去呢8個地方以外嘅一個地方搭飛機嚟香港，但其實喺一段時間之前咧，佢喺呢個地方咧都係唔嚟得㗎啦。咁啊係一個做到更加嚴格㗎啦。咁呢8個嘅地方咧就係澳洲、加拿大、法國、印度、巴基斯坦、菲律賓、英國同埋美國。
The restrictions are the latest economic blow to an international business hub pursuing a zero-COVID strategy that has kept cases low but left residents cut off from the rest of the world. Like mainland China, Hong Kong has maintained some of the world's harshest measures throughout the pandemic, including virtually closed borders, weeks-long quarantines, targeted lockdowns, and mass testing. The city has recorded 114 Omicron cases as of Tuesday evening, with the vast majority identified at the airport or during the 21-day hotel quarantine that is mandatory for most arrivals. But a small community outbreak traced to Cathay Pacific Airlines staff in recent days has sparked the imposition of tough new measures.
Following the announcement by Hong Kong's government banning for 2 weeks all flights from 8 countries, including the Philippines, the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration on Thursday said that the agency is now closely monitoring the situation of OFWs who might be stranded due to the flight ban. During the Laging Handa briefing, OWA Administrator Hans Kakdak said the OWA is now preparing food, accommodation, and transportations for these OFWs. Take a look.
Well, binabantayan natin ngayon sa airport yung mga posibleng maapektuhan kasi ng mga nakaraang karanasan, nakikita na natin na nasa stranded sila. At although in general, ang mga recruitment agencies are very cooperative at have the resources to help yung mga magiging stranded sa airport, hindi matutuloy yung flights, etc. Pero meron tayo kasi yung mga balik manggagawa, yung wala na sa recruitment agency arrangements, kusang loob na lang nanunumbalik sa kanilang employer. Sila yung malamang natutulungan natin. Kung wala silang matutuluyan dito sa Maynila, kung taga-probinsya sila, taga-ibang regions, ay tutulungan natin sila magkaroon ng shelter, of course, food and accommodations yan, na ibibigay natin sa kanila. At assistance na rin yung transport from the airport at kung saan man nila gusto magpahatid. So nakahanda tayo ngayon na tulungan yung mga posibleng mas stranded gawa nitong restrictions sa Hong Kong.
National artist for literature F. Sionil Jose died Thursday evening at the Makati Medical Center. In a Facebook post by the Philippine Center of International Pen, which Jose himself founded, the literary titan was scheduled to undergo an angioplasty this Friday, January 7, but apparently died in his sleep, according to his wife, Tessie Jovellanos Jose. Jose was declared dead at 9:30 p.m. He had just turned 97 last December 3. A native of Rosales, Pangasinan, Francisco Sionil Jose, or simply F. Sionil Jose, is regarded as one of the most widely read Filipino writers in the English language. Among his best-known novels and the short stories include the Rosales Saga series, Ermita, Waywaya, 11 Filipino short stories, Viajero, and 2 Filipino women. Aside from being honored as National Artist for Literature, Jose also received numerous other accolades, including the Ramon Magsaysay Award for Journalism, Literature and Creative Communication Arts, Carlos Palanca Memorial Award for Literature, Pablo Neruda Centennial Award, and the Chevalier Dance Lord des Arts et Lettres.
In other news, the Philippine Army is expected to receive 20 new Israeli defense manufacturer Elbit Systems Land Sabra Ascot or tracked light tanks, which are expected to greatly enhance its armor capabilities. In a message Thursday night, Colonel Xerxes Trinidad, the spokesperson said Philippine Army spokesperson said these armored vehicles are part of the Army's light tank acquisition project under Horizon 2 of the revised Armed Forces Modernization Program. Asked how these light tanks will be organized once they're delivered, Trinidad said these vehicles will comprise the planned 1st Tank Battalion of the Philippine Army Armored Division. He said these armored vehicles are mounted with 105mm cannons. As to their organization, the tanks will be organic to the proposed activation of 1st Tank Battalion of the Armored Division to compose the first modern light tank fleet of the Philippine Army. The contract is worth around 9.4 billion pesos and was acquired via government-to-government mode.
The Philippines will have more assets for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief missions as initial funding for the acquisition of 32 additional Polish-made S-70I Black Hawk combat utility helicopters were released on December 27. Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana told the Philippine News Agency on Tuesday night, when asked to comment on the initial budget release for the acquisition of the aircraft, that they are delighted with the release of the SAROS or Special Allotment Release Order. We really need more helicopters, primarily for HADR missions. The S-70I units of the Philippine Air Force are currently hard at work, transporting relief supplies and rescue personnel to areas battered by Typhoon Odette last month. They have also been utilized to transport COVID-19 vaccines in geographically isolated areas in the country. The Department of Budget and Management on December 27 released SARO to the Defense Department amounting to 1.6 billion to cover the initial funding requirement for the additional utility helicopters acquisition project of the Philippine Air Force under the revised Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Program.
But wait, there's more. The Army Artillery Regiment, or AAR, will get a much-needed boost with the recent delivery of 12 units of Soltam 155mm 52 caliber self-propelled howitzers from Israeli firm Elbit Systems. The weapons that arrived in the country last December 28 are now scheduled for technical inspection this month prior to formal acceptance of the AAR, the Philippine Army spokesperson, Colonel Xerxes Trinidad, said on Thursday. Trinidad also said the 12 self-propelled howitzers were acquired to provide the AAR with mobility with firepower. It was acquired under a government-to-government setup under Horizon 2 of the AFP, or Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Program, and is worth 2.4 billion pesos. He added that the weapons will augment the existing 155mm towed howitzer being operated by the AAR. Thanks, Eliana, for keeping me company today and the whole week. Thank you, ASEAN Bureau. Keep safe.
Thank you, Alma, and you stay safe too. And that's the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Oliana Sebastian from EBC Vietnam Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
And we'll see you back next week, Monday, same time, same place. You're on ASEAN in Focus. Stay in the news because we live in interesting times.